Welcome to the world of science fiction, where extraordinary tales come to life. Enjoy the journey. The empty beer bottle shattered against the wall, sending glass shards raining onto the worn metal floor of Stephen Reiner's cramped apartment. The holographic screen flickered, casting eerie blue light across his unshaven face as he scowled at the broadcast. Our reports continue of insurgent activity near the Epsilon Quadrant. The Galactic Council urges citizens to remain vigilant. Stephen snorted and reached for another bottle from the stained cooling unit beside his threadbare couch. 28 years old, and this was his life. A shoebox dwelling on the ass end of Omega-7 Station, drinking alone while watching propaganda disguised as news. Computer, channel swap. Something with actual entertainment value, he ordered, his voice rough from disuse. The screen changed to a lurid reality show, Alien Love Nests, featuring improbably proportioned beings from across the galaxy engaged in romantic drama so fake it made his teeth hurt. Still, it was better than thinking about his own pitiful existence. A sharp, insistent knock rattled his door. Stephen's hand froze midway to his mouth. Nobody visited him. Nobody knew he existed. That was the point. The knock came again, harder this time, metal groaning under the impact. Something deep inside Stephen's brain triggered, a warning system he didn't know he possessed. His muscles tensed, heartbeat slowing rather than speeding up. The bottle in his hand suddenly felt like a weapon. "Reiner, open up!" a gravelly voice bellowed. "We know you're in there." Stephen moved silently to the door panel, careful to position himself against the wall rather than directly in front of it. Another instinct he couldn't explain. "Who is it?" he called, trying to sound drunk and confused. "Your creditors, human. 50,000 credits past due. Mr. Kroon doesn't appreciate tardiness." Stephen's brow furrowed. Kroon? Creditors? He'd never borrowed money from anyone. Couldn't even if he wanted to with his poverty-level maintenance job scrubbing waste processors. "You've got the wrong guy," he called. The response was immediate, a searing blast of energy that melted through the door lock, leaving a glowing, molten hole. 3 figures pushed their way in, hulking brutes with grafted exoskeletons and bioluminescent facial tattoos marking them as Krell mercenaries. "Wrong answer," growled the leader, raising a neural disruptor. Stephen's consciousness seemed to split in two. Part of him was terrified, frozen, but another part, a deeper self, took control of his body with practiced ease. He hurled the beer bottle with deadly precision. It struck the leader's throat, shattering against an implant node. The Krell howled as electric current sparked across his neck enhancements. Without thinking, Stephen dropped low and launched upward with a perfect uppercut to the second Krell's jaw. The impact resonated through his fist with a sickening crunch of alien cartilage. "What the hell am I doing?" The thought flashed through his mind as his body continued moving with expert precision he'd never trained for. The third Krell lunged with a vibroblade. Stephen sidestepped, grabbed the mercenary's wrist, and used the attacker's momentum to slam him into the wall, denting the metal paneling. "Who sent you?" Stephen demanded, surprised by the authority in his own voice. The wounded Krell spat glowing blue blood. "You know damn well. The debt collector always comes, even for a ghost like you." Stephen twisted the Krell's arm harder. "I don't have any debts. Not what your file says. Commander." "Commander?" The word triggered a flash of memory. A uniform, medals, a ship bridge, but it vanished before Stephen could grasp it. The distraction cost him. The first Krell had recovered enough to fire his disruptor. Stephen ducked, but not fast enough. The edge of the energy field clipped his shoulder, sending numb paralysis down his arm. "Time to go," he muttered to himself, kicking the second Krell into the path of another disruptor blast and bolting through the doorway. Stephen raced through the grimy corridors of Omega-7's residential sector, his legs carrying him with a runner's efficiency he never knew he possessed. Alarms blared as station security detected weapons discharge. He turned down maintenance hallways instinctively, avoiding camera nodes. How did he know where they were? The question burned in his mind as his body navigated the station like a memorized map. The Krell's heavy footfalls echoed behind him, gaining ground. Stephen ducked into a service tunnel, barely wide enough for his shoulders. The passageway descended into the bowels of the station, toward the old sections rarely visited by anyone but maintenance drones. After 10 minutes of navigating the labyrinthine underbelly of Omega-7, Stephen emerged into a section he'd never seen before. Warning glyphs covered sealed bulkheads, abandoned during the station's last major refit decades ago. Restricted area, artifact containment read a faded sign in multiple languages. The door should have been locked, but it slid open at his approach as if expecting him. Inside was a circular chamber bathed in soft blue light. At its center, suspended in a containment field, floated a cube approximately 20 centimeters on each side. Its surface shimmered with etched symbols that seemed to move when viewed peripherally. "What the hell?" Stephen whispered, approaching the artifact cautiously. Behind him, the bulkhead door hissed shut and sealed with a heavy clank. The cube pulsed, its glow intensifying as Stephen approached. The symbols became more agitated, swirling across its surfaces like living creatures. "Unauthorized presence detected," blared an automated security system. "Containment breach imminent. Security protocols activated." Defensive turrets emerged from the walls, targeting lasers painting red dots across Stephen's chest. "Shit!" He dove behind a control console as the first volley of stun rounds struck where he'd been standing. The cube's pulsing increased, growing brighter with each flash. Its containment field flickered, destabilizing. "Artifact destabilization critical. Emergency personnel evacuate immediately," the automated voice warned. The security turret swiveled, now targeting the cube instead of Stephen. "No!" Stephen shouted, though he couldn't explain why he cared. He leapt from cover, dodging suppression fire, and lunged toward the cube. His fingertips brushed its surface just as the containment field collapsed. The moment of contact sent electricity arcing through Stephen's body. The cube's surface seemed to liquefy, flowing up his arm like quicksilver, burrowing beneath his skin. Excruciating pain exploded in his chest as the artifact merged with him, sinking through muscle and bone. Stephen collapsed, convulsing. Through tear-filled eyes, he saw the cube vanish completely, leaving only a glowing imprint on his chest that pulsed in time with his heart. A voice, ancient and powerful, resonated inside his skull. "Finally, you are the last. The self-deception ends now." Darkness claimed him. Stephen awoke to soft sheets and the scent of exotic flowers. For a moment he thought he was dreaming. His apartment had never smelled of anything but stale beer and recycled air. He opened his eyes to a vast chamber decorated in materials he couldn't identify. Metals that seemed to flow like liquid, fabrics that shimmered with impossible colors. Through a massive viewport he saw stars and, beyond them, the gleaming hulls of spacecraft. Hundreds, perhaps thousands of them. "What the—" He sat up, wincing at the dull ache in his chest. Looking down, he saw an intricate pattern glowing beneath his skin, centered over his heart, the cube's symbols now etched into his flesh. "The integration is complete, Sovereign," came a melodic female voice. Stephen jerked his head toward the sound. A woman stood in the doorway, tall, lithe, with deep blue skin that shimmered with subtle iridescence. Her features were hauntingly familiar, though he was certain he'd never seen her before. Her uniform bore insignia he didn't recognize, yet somehow understood indicated supreme military rank. "Who are you?" he demanded. "Where am I?" She approached, moving with liquid grace, and knelt beside his bed. I am Admiral Anita Kalex of the 7th Galactic Fleet. You are aboard the flagship Eternal Dominion. Her luminous eyes studied him with unsettling intensity. The Cube of Awakening has found you, as the prophecies foretold. Stephen laughed, a harsh sound devoid of humor. Lady, I think you've got the wrong guy. I'm a maintenance tech on a garbage station. Anita's expression remained serious. That was your cover, Sovereign. A necessary deception while the cube sought your essence. She stood and gestured toward the viewport. These ships have awaited your return for 7 centuries. The last of the ancient lords has awakened. Ancient lords? 7 centuries? Stephen shook his head. This is insane. I'm Stephen Reiner, nobody special. That identity was constructed to protect you after the cleansing wars. Your true essence is far older, far greater. Anita's voice softened. The memory loss was intentional. Your mind could not contain your true self while in hiding. The absurdity of it all should have made Stephen laugh again, but something held him back. Flashes of dreams he'd had all his life. Dreams of commanding vast fleets, of wielding powers beyond human comprehension, of other worlds and other lives. This is ridiculous, he muttered, swinging his legs over the edge of the bed. I'm leaving. To where? Anita asked calmly. The mercenaries who pursued you were merely the first. Others will come now that the cube has activated. Your energy signature is unmistakable to those who know what to look for. Stephen stood, his patience evaporating. Look, I don't know what game you're playing, but his anger triggered something inside him. Energy surged through his veins, collecting in his fingertips. A bolt of golden light erupted from his hand, blasting a smoldering hole through the ornate wall. Stephen stared at his hand in shock, then at the destruction he'd caused. Anita didn't flinch. Your powers return already. Impressive. Most lords required months of reconditioning after awakening. A trembling attendant appeared at the doorway, eyes wide at the damage. Bring the sovereign appropriate attire, Anita ordered, and inform the council the awakening is proceeding faster than anticipated. The attendant bowed deeply and rushed away. This can't be happening, Stephen whispered, looking again at his hand, where golden energy still danced between his fingers. Your true memories will return gradually, Anita said. The mental barriers are dissolving now that the cube has merged with your essence. As if triggered by her words, images flooded Stephen's mind, faces of beings he'd never met, landscapes of worlds he'd never visited, knowledge of technologies beyond human understanding. Each vision felt simultaneously alien and deeply familiar, like childhood memories long suppressed. I saw you, he said suddenly, in my dreams, but different. Younger. Your hair was silver, worn in a warrior's braid, Anita finished. That was 6 centuries ago, during the siege of Vega Prime. I was your lieutenant then. The door slid open again, and several attendants entered bearing elaborate garments that seemed to be made of living metal. The council awaits your presence, Sovereign, Anita said. The galaxy has suffered in your absence. Many will rejoice at your return. Her eyes darkened. Others will not. Stephen looked at his reflection in a wall panel, stubbled, confused, ordinary. Nothing like a being of power, nothing like an ancient lord. Yet, as he watched, his eyes briefly flashed with golden light, identical to the energy that had erupted from his hand. What if I don't want this? He asked quietly. Anita's expression softened with what might have been compassion. That, Sovereign, is the one choice no longer available to you. Outside the viewport, a new vessel appeared, a massive warship eclipsing the others. On its hull, symbols identical to those on the cube glowed with pulsing light. The awakening had begun. Stephen stared at the ornate battle armor laid before him, its metallic surface shifting with colors that shouldn't exist in nature. The bodysuit beneath was made of a material so light it seemed to float, yet the attendants assured him it could withstand direct energy weapon blasts. "Is this really necessary?" he asked, running his fingers over the intricate engravings. Anita stood at attention near the doorway. The sovereign must appear invincible, especially now, with dissent brewing in the outer systems. 3 days had passed since his awakening, as they called it. 3 days of strangers bowing to him, of whispered conversations that stopped when he entered rooms, of bizarre memories flooding his consciousness at random intervals. Fine. Stephen shrugged off the silk robe they'd given him and began donning the armor. He caught Anita watching him, her gaze lingering on his bare torso where the cube symbols pulsed beneath his skin. "You've seen it before," he said, more statement than question. "Many times." Her voice remained neutral, but something flickered behind her eyes. "Though the pattern is different now. It's evolving." Stephen finished securing the final clasp. The armor adjusted instantly, molding to his body as if alive. "Tell me about the ancient lords," he demanded. Anita's posture stiffened. "You'll receive a full historical briefing from the council archivists." "No." Stephen stepped closer, surprised at how easily authority came to him now. "I want to hear it from you. The truth, not some sanitized version." For a moment he thought she would refuse. Then her shoulders dropped slightly. You, were creators and destroyers, 8 beings of immense power who shaped the galaxy according to their will. She gestured toward the viewport where thousands of ships floated in perfect formation. "The species you see serving you now were engineered for specific purposes. The Krell for war, the Alturian for scientific advancement, my people for administration and naval command." "Created," Stephen repeated. "Like lab animals? Like tools?" Anita's voice hardened. "The lords needed servants to manage their empire while they focused on matters they deemed worthy of their attention, manipulating cosmic energy, transcending physical limitations, competing with each other for dominance." Stephen's stomach nodded. "And I was one of them?" "The last. The others were destroyed in the cleansing wars 7 centuries ago." She hesitated. "You disappeared. Many believed you dead. Others claimed you had hidden yourself, waiting for the right moment to return." Before Stephen could respond, the door slid open. A delegation of officials entered, their elaborate costumes marking them as representatives from various worlds. They dropped to their knees in perfect unison. "The council awaits, Sovereign," announced an elderly being with translucent skin. "The fleet commanders request your blessing before the reclamation begins." "Reclamation?" Stephen glanced at Anita. "Later," she whispered, then louder. "The Sovereign will join you momentarily." After the delegation departed, Stephen grabbed Anita's arm. "What reclamation?" "Several systems have declared independence since your absence. The fleet has been mobilized to bring them back into the fold now that you've returned." "By force?" The thought made him sick. "It's your empire," Anita replied coolly. "How else would you suggest we proceed?" The great hall of the Eternal Dominion could have housed a small city. Thousands of beings from dozens of species filled the massive space, segregated by race and function. As Stephen entered from an elevated platform, a hush fell over the crowd, followed by a synchronized genuflection that sent a wave of movement through the assembly. "All hail the Sovereign Lord, returned from the void," boomed an amplified voice. The response was deafening. "Hail! Hail! Hail!" Stephen fought to keep his expression neutral as he took his place on a floating dais at the hall's center. The council, 12 beings of different species, occupied smaller platforms arranged in a circle below him. "The Sovereign honors us with his presence," intoned the translucent elder from earlier. "We have preserved your empire as best we could during your absence, Lord Stephen." Stephen. He couldn't hide his surprise at hearing his human name. Your chosen appellation in this cycle, explained a council member with 4 arms and chitinous skin. We have maintained the archives of all your names throughout the eons. Would you prefer another? No, that's fine. Stephen looked across the vast crowd, unsettled by the worship in their eyes. I understand there are plans for reclaiming territories. The council exchanged glances. Merely restoring the natural order, Sovereign, said a female counselor. The upstart systems must be reminded of their place. Commander Kane's rebellion spreads like a disease. Holographic displays materialized, showing star systems and battle plans. The proposed reclamation would cost millions of lives. And these rebels, what exactly are they fighting against? Stephen asked. An uncomfortable silence followed. Against your divine right to rule, Anita finally answered from her position beside the dais. They fear the return of the old ways. The old ways, Stephen repeated. You mean tyranny? The word hung in the air like a physical thing. Several council members recoiled as if slapped. Sovereignty, corrected the eldest counselor. The natural order established by the ancient lords. Stephen stood, and the entire hall seemed to hold its breath. I want to learn more before any military action is taken. These are still my subjects, are they not? Even in rebellion. The disappointment was palpable, but none dared contradict him. The meeting continued with administrative matters that Stephen barely comprehended. His attention drifted to the memories that continued to surface. Fragments of a life spanning millennia, power beyond imagination, and acts of casual cruelty that made him shudder. What kind of monster was I? He wondered as the council droned on. What kind of monster am I becoming? In the days that followed, Stephen threw himself into training, surprising even himself with how naturally combat came to him. His body remembered forms and techniques he'd never learned as a human. Each day, his strength and speed increased, along with his control over the energy that now coursed through his veins. The cube symbols spread gradually across his chest, occasionally sending searing pain through him as new memories surfaced. He saw worlds burning, species engineered and discarded, and always the driving hunger for more power. One night, unable to sleep, he wandered to the observation deck. Anita was there, staring at the stars. You should rest, Sovereign, she said, without turning. Stop calling me that when we're alone, Stephen said, moving beside her. I'm still trying to figure out who I am. Anita turned to him, her face illuminated by starlight. I knew you, before, not just as your admiral. The intensity of her gaze made his skin warm. Tell me. She stepped closer, her voice dropping. You used me, as you used everyone, but She touched his chest where the symbols glowed beneath his shirt. I believe there was something more beneath the cruelty. Her proximity awakened something primal in him. Without thinking, he pulled her against him, his lips finding hers. She responded with equal passion, her body melting into his. When they separated, her eyes shimmered with unshed tears. I hated the lords my entire life, prepared for vengeance, and yet here I am, still your willing servant. I'm not that person anymore, Stephen whispered. Anita's smile held no warmth. Aren't you? Your body remembers. Your power grows daily. Soon, the full memories will return. She pressed herself against him again. I've been yours before. I will be again, even though I don't know what I truly feel for you. Stephen didn't remember their past, but his body responded to her touch with familiar hunger. That night, in his chambers, their bodies tangled in ancient patterns. As they reached climax together, the symbols on his chest flared with golden light, and a flood of memories crashed through him. Anita, centuries younger, crying out beneath him as planets burned in the viewport behind them. He recoiled, pushing her away, horrified by the vision. You remembered, she said, not a question. I was a monster, he whispered. Anita gathered the sheets around her naked form. You were a god. There's a difference. Not to those who suffered. The diplomatic mission to Eridan IV was Anita's idea, a chance to show the outer systems that the sovereign had returned benevolently. The planet was a strategic hub, rich in resources and situated at a key hyperspace junction. Stephen arrived with minimal escort despite security concerns. The planet's surface was mainly desert, with sprawling settlements constructed around ancient mining operations. The local governor, a corpulent being with multiple eye stalks, greeted him with elaborate ceremony. "We are honored by your divine presence, Sovereign," the governor groveled. "Eridan IV has always been loyal." "Has it?" Stephen asked, noting the tension in the assembled crowd. Many bore signs of hardship: thin bodies, worn clothing, fearful eyes. "Absolutely." The governor's assurance came too quickly. "We have prepared a celebration in your honor, our most sacred rituals." The sacred ritual proved to be a public spectacle in the central plaza. Thousands gathered around a circular stone platform where guards dragged a struggling figure. Stephen's breath caught as he saw her, a woman with vibrant purple skin that caught the light like polished amethyst. Her form was perfectly proportioned, making the thin shift they dressed her in seem all the more degrading. What captivated him most were her eyes, bright emerald green, fierce and defiant despite her situation. "What is this?" he demanded. The governor puffed importantly. "Justice, Sovereign. This Argont dared speak against your rule. They are a cursed race, ungrateful for the purpose your divinity gave them." The woman was forced to her knees. The crowd began to chant, reaching for stones piled nearby. "The ritual of purification," Anita explained quietly. "The Argonts were created to mine crystal formations too delicate for machinery. When they rebelled centuries ago, you ordered examples to be made." "I ordered this?" The thought sickened him. The first stone flew, striking the woman's shoulder. She didn't cry out. More followed, drawing purple blood that glistened in the harsh sunlight. Something snapped inside Stephen. Before he consciously decided to move, he was across the plaza, his body moving with inhuman speed. As a particularly large stone arced toward the woman, he interposed himself between her and the projectile. The stone struck his chest and shattered against his armor. In the same motion, his hand shot out, catching the thrower by the throat. His fingers closed with surgical precision, separating the being's head from its body in one clean, horrible movement. The crowd froze in terrified silence. Stephen stood over the purple-skinned woman, his eyes blazing with golden fire. Blood dripped from his hand, yet he felt nothing but cold clarity. His body had acted on ancient muscle memory, executing a kill with practiced efficiency. "Anyone else?" he asked, his voice eerily calm. The plaza emptied in seconds, leaving only his guards, Anita, and the stunned governor. "Sovereign, I don't understand," the governor stammered. "The ritual is in your honor." "No more," Stephen commanded. "No more rituals, no more stones, no more punishment of the Argonts." He turned to the woman, who stared up at him with those striking green eyes. Blood trickled from a cut on her cheek, but she showed no fear. "Why?" she whispered, her voice musical despite her condition. Stephen helped her to her feet, surprised by how light she felt. "Because life is sacred," he said, the words coming from somewhere deep inside him. "Even the life of created beings." Her eyes widened. Nearby, he heard Anita's sharp intake of breath. "Those are the words of the renegade," Anita said, her voice tight with tension. "The only lord who stood against his brothers in the final days." The Argont woman's gaze intensified. "You truly don't remember, do you?" she asked softly. "Remember what?" "I am Marcia Revengard," she said, drawing herself up despite her injuries. leader of the Argont Liberation Force. And you, she paused, you were prophesied to return. The reborn lord who takes the blow meant for slaves will change the fate of stars. Stephen felt the cube's symbols burn beneath his armor. I don't believe in prophecies. Marcia's smile revealed perfect white teeth against her purple skin. Yet here you are, fulfilling one. Later, aboard his ship with Marcia given quarters and medical attention despite Anita's objections, Stephen felt the universe shifting around him. The brief violence on the plaza had awakened something more in him, not just the monster of his past, but perhaps something else, something that had rebelled against his own kind. The renegade, he murmured to his reflection as the ship left Eridan IV's orbit. Is that who I really was? His eyes flashed gold in response, and somewhere deep in his consciousness, a voice that might have been his own answered. You are becoming what you were always meant to be. The eternal dominion surged through hyperspace, its massive engines bending reality around the vessel. Stephen stood alone in his private observatory, watching the star streaks blur past the reinforced viewport. The cube's symbols on his chest pulsed with increasing frequency, each beat sending fragments of ancient memories cascading through his mind. A soft chime announced a visitor. He didn't need to turn to know who it was. Her scent reached him first, an otherworldly combination of crystalline minerals and something uniquely her own. Come in, Marcia, he called. The Argont woman entered, her movements fluid and graceful. The medical treatments had healed her external wounds, but wariness still shadowed her emerald eyes. She'd been given appropriate clothing, a simple but elegant bodysuit that complemented her violet skin, but she'd refused the more elaborate garments offered by the ship's attendants. You requested my presence, Sovereign. There was a hint of defiance in how she pronounced his title. Stephen, he corrected, turning to face her. Just Stephen when we're alone. Marcia approached, stopping an arm's length away. The crew whispers that you're not like before, that you've changed. Her head tilted slightly. Have you? I don't know who I was before, Stephen admitted. I get flashes, memories of terrible things, power used without conscience. You were a monster, Marcia said bluntly. All the lords were. You engineered entire species to serve your whims, including mine. Stephen winced. And yet you mentioned a prophecy about me. Marcia's expression softened slightly. Not about the lord you were, about the man you might become. She stepped closer, the starlight catching the subtle iridescence of her skin. You were always different from the others. That's what the oldest stories say. In the final days, when the lords turned on each other, you stood against them, protected the created races. They called you the renegade. And now? What am I now? Her emerald eyes studied him intently. That remains to be seen, doesn't it? Something electric passed between them, a connection that transcended their disparate origins. Stephen felt drawn to her in ways he couldn't explain, a pull that went beyond her obvious beauty to something more fundamental. Show me, he said suddenly. Show you what? The resistance, your people, what you're fighting for. Marcia's eyes widened in surprise. You want to see the rebellion from the inside. I need to understand what I'm truly facing, what choices I have. A slow smile spread across her face, transforming her features from merely beautiful to radiant. That would be unprecedented. I'm getting the feeling that's becoming my specialty. This is absolute madness, Anita fumed, pacing Stephen's quarters later that evening. Visiting the rebellion's stronghold? They'll kill you the moment you set foot there. They could try, Stephen replied calmly, watching the symbols pulse beneath his skin as he changed into less conspicuous clothing. Is this because of her? Anita's voice sharpened with accusation. The Argont woman has been with you less than a week and already she's turning you against everything. Against what, exactly? Stephen interrupted. A legacy of tyranny, a system where beings are created just to serve and suffer. Anita stepped closer, her blue skin flushed darker with emotion. Against your destiny, your birthright. Her hand touched his chest where the cube symbols glowed. The Council has voted. They're prepared to grant you full control of the Galactic fleet to crush Kane's rebellion once and for all. With a single command, you could end this conflict and unite the galaxy under your rule again. Through fear, Stephen said quietly. Through strength, she countered. It's who you are. Stephen caught her hand, holding it against his heart. Is it? Because these memories I'm recovering, they tell a different story. They show me fighting against the other lords, protecting the created races. Anita's expression faltered. That was a temporary aberration, a moment of weakness before the final conflict. Or maybe it was the only moment of clarity I ever had. He released her hand. I need to see for myself. I'm going with Marcia to the resistance base. Then I'm coming with you, Anita declared. Stephen raised an eyebrow. The Admiral of the 7th Fleet? They'd execute you on sight. I've infiltrated rebel bases before, she said with grim determination, and I'm not letting you go alone with her. The jealousy in her voice was unmistakable. Stephen chose not to acknowledge it directly. Fine, but you follow my lead. No weapons, no communications back to the fleet. Anita's expression hardened. As the Sovereign commands. The rebel stronghold wasn't what Stephen expected. Instead of a hidden military base, Marcia led them to an enormous, hollowed-out asteroid in a remote system. Inside was a thriving community, not just Argonts but members of dozens of species living together in apparent harmony. Welcome to Haven, Marcia said as their small transport docked, the first free colony in the galaxy. Stephen felt the stares as they moved through the crowded corridors, some curious, others hostile. Anita stayed close behind him, her hand never far from where her weapon would normally be. They know who you are, Marcia explained. Your energy signature is unmistakable, even disguised. And they're not attacking because I vouched for you, and because they're curious about the Lord who saved an Argont from stoning. She led them to a large chamber where a diverse group had assembled around a circular table. At its head stood a tall, imposing figure with cybernetic enhancements visible along his jaw and left arm, Commander Kane, leader of the rebellion. So, Kane's voice rumbled through the chamber, the Sovereign himself graces us with his presence. Stephen met his gaze steadily. I'm here to listen, to understand what you're fighting for. Freedom, Kane replied simply. The right of all sentient beings to determine their own destiny, not serve as tools for immortal tyrants. Bold words to speak directly to one of those tyrants, Anita interjected sharply. Kane's cybernetic eye focused on her. Admiral Kellex, your presence is even more surprising. His gaze returned to Stephen. You've brought the architect of 1,000 massacres into our sanctuary. Your trust in our hospitality is either arrogant or foolish. I trust Marcia, Stephen replied, and she trusts you despite your obvious hostility. Kane's organic eye narrowed. Marcia believes in prophecies. I believe in actions. He gestured to a holographic display that activated in the center of the table. These are the worlds your fleet has reclaimed in the past century. Notice the population figures before and after. The numbers were devastating, billions reduced to millions through systematic purges. That wasn't me, Stephen began. It was done in your name, Kane cut him off, by your admirals, your council, your empire. Enough, Marcia intervened. He's here to listen, not to be judged for actions he doesn't remember. Kane's expression softened marginally when he looked at her. Very well. Show him what we found in the ancient archives. Let him judge himself. The rebel archives were housed in the asteroid's core, protected by security measures that would have impressed even the Empire's best engineers. Marcia led Stephen and Anita past layers of defenses to a sealed vault. What we're about to show you was recovered from one of the original Lord sanctuaries, she explained, placing her palm against a scanner. It took us decades to decode the data. What we found changed everything we thought we knew about the Lords, about you. The vault opened to reveal a single pedestal housing a crystalline data matrix identical in structure to the cube embedded in Stephen's chest. Anita gasped. Another cube of awakening? No, Marcia said. A cube of truth, created by the one you call the Renegade. She activated the device and the room filled with holographic projections, star maps, technical schematics, and recording fragments showing beings in elaborate armor similar to Stephen's. The ancient lords. The cubes weren't created to preserve your consciousness or power, Marcia explained. They were control devices designed to ensure the lords never became too independent from their creators. Creators? Stephen felt the symbols on his chest burn. The lords had creators? Higher beings from another dimension, Marcia confirmed. They engineered the lords as administrators for this galaxy, just as the lords later created races to serve them. The hologram shifted to show a familiar face, Stephen's face, but with eyes that held millennia of knowledge. You discovered the truth, Marcia continued, that you were as much a slave as those you ruled. You created this cube to store the evidence and your own uncorrupted consciousness. But before you could use it, the other lords attacked. The cleansing wars began. Stephen watched in silence as the recording showed planetary devastation on an unimaginable scale, the lords turning their powers against each other while civilizations burned around them. This is heresy, Anita whispered, her face pale. The lords were divine beings, not created tools. The line between God and slave is thinner than we like to believe, Marcia replied softly. Stephen approached the projection of his former self. What happened to me? To him? You fought against the others, trying to protect the created races. When it became clear you would lose, you fragmented your consciousness and power, hiding them in human form until the time was right to return. And the cube in my chest, what is it really? Marcia hesitated, glancing at Anita before answering. It's a control mechanism. Anyone who possesses the master key can command you, channeling your power for their purposes. And who has this key? Stephen demanded. The Council, Anita admitted, her voice barely audible. They've kept it in stasis, waiting for your return. They plan to use it once your powers fully manifest. Stephen felt cold fury building inside him. You knew this? I suspected, she said, unable to meet his eyes. But my loyalty was to the Empire, to you. To a version of me that was never real, he corrected bitterly. Marcia approached him, her emerald eyes intense. There's more. The prophecy isn't just about your return. It's about your choice, to reclaim your godhood and continue the cycle of dominance, or to break it forever by destroying the cube. Destroying it would kill me, Stephen realized. It would make you mortal, she corrected. Human, but free. That night, unable to sleep in the quarters provided by the rebels, Stephen found himself drawn to an observation blister that looked out over the asteroid field surrounding Haven. The stars seemed closer here, away from the Empire's light pollution and artificial atmospheres. He sensed her presence before he heard her footsteps. Marcia approached, silhouetted against the starlight. Contemplating your divinity? She asked, a hint of teasing in her voice. Contemplating humanity, he replied. My humanity. She moved beside him, close enough that he could feel the warmth radiating from her violet skin. And what conclusion have you reached? That I don't want to be a god if it means enslaving others. He turned to face her. But I don't know if I can give up the power either. Not if it means leaving the galaxy in chaos. Marcia's hand touched his chest where the cube's symbols glowed beneath his shirt. Unlike when Anita touched him, there was no pain, only a resonant warmth that spread through his body. "Your power was never in the cube," she said softly. "It only channels what's already within you." Their eyes locked and the connection between them intensified, a bridge spanning millennia and genetic engineering, defying the very hierarchy that had created them both. Without conscious thought, Stephen pulled her against him. Their lips met in a kiss that transcended the physical, her crystalline biology resonating with the energy in his veins. As the kiss deepened, the universe seemed to expand around them, revealing vistas of possibility neither had imagined. When they separated, breathless, the symbols on Stephen's chest were glowing brighter than ever, but the pain had vanished completely. "What is happening to me?" he whispered. Marcia's eyes shimmered with emotion. "You're remembering who you really are, not the Lord, not the human, something new, something better." That night, in the privacy of Stephen's quarters, they came together in a union that defied the natural order. As their bodies joined, the energy within him flowed through them both, creating a feedback loop of increasing power and sensation. At the moment of climax, the symbols on his chest projected outward, surrounding them in a cocoon of golden light. Within that light, Stephen saw the truth, not just fragments but the whole story, his original rebellion, his plan to free all beings from the cycle of domination, his love for a violet-skinned woman in another lifetime. Afterward, holding Marcia against his chest, Stephen made his decision. "I know what I have to do." The council chamber on the Eternal Dominion fell silent as Stephen entered, flanked by Marcia and Anita. The 12 council members studied the unlikely trio with barely concealed shock. "Sovereign," the eldest counselor began cautiously, "we were not informed of your return." "Nor of your companion," added another, eyeing Marcia with distaste. Stephen took his place on the central dais but remained standing. "I've seen the rebel stronghold. I've learned their grievances, and I've made my decision regarding the future of this empire." Relief visibly washed over the council. The eldest activated a control panel, revealing an ornate container. "Excellent timing, Sovereign. We have prepared the master key for the final awakening of your powers. Once synchronized with your cube, it will allow you complete control over your godhood." The container opened to reveal a device identical to the one embedded in Stephen's chest, but smaller, a perfect key to his lock. "With it," continued the counselor, "you can crush the rebellion with a thought and restore the natural order. All created beings will serve their purpose once more under your benevolent rule." Stephen approached the key, feeling the cube in his chest resonate with its counterpart. The pull was almost irresistible, godhood within his grasp. Anita stepped forward. "It is your destiny, Sovereign. Take what is rightfully yours." He looked at her, loyal, beautiful, conflicted, then at Marcia, whose eyes held not judgment but trust. Stephen smiled. "You're right. I should take what's mine." In one fluid motion, he grabbed the key and slammed it against his chest where the cube pulsed. Energy exploded outward as the two devices recognized each other, beginning the synchronization process. "Yes," exulted the eldest counselor, "the ascension begins." But instead of embracing the power, Stephen focused his will on rejection. "I am Stephen Reiner," he declared, "not a lord, not a god, not a slave to ancient programming, and neither is anyone else in this galaxy." He channeled all his newfound power into the key, causing it to overload. The pain was excruciating as the cube in his chest began to destabilize in response. "Stop him!" shouted a counselor. "He's destroying the divine legacy." Guards rushed forward, but Anita intercepted them, her loyalty to Stephen finally overcoming her conditioning. Marcia stepped to Stephen's side, placing her hand over his heart, her crystalline biology helping to stabilize the reaction. "What are you doing?" she asked through gritted teeth as energy whipped around them. Stephen met her gaze, golden light streaming from his eyes. "Breaking the cycle, setting everyone free, including myself." With a final surge of will, he completed the overload. The key shattered in his hand, and the cube in his chest cracked, its golden light fading to a dull glow before disappearing entirely. Stephen collapsed to his knees, suddenly lighter yet infinitely heavier. Human, mortal, free. The council chamber erupted in chaos. Some members fled, others called for Stephen's execution. But as they watched, something unexpected happened. The energy released from the cube's destruction didn't dissipate. It expanded outward in a wave that washed over everyone present. "What have you done?" Anita asked, helping him to his feet. Stephen smiled, feeling both weaker and stronger than he ever had. "Fulfilled the prophecy, given everyone a piece of what was once mine alone." The wave continued outward, beyond the ship, beyond the system. A pulse of freedom that would eventually touch every corner of the galaxy, breaking ancient controls embedded in the DNA of created races. "No more masters," Stephen said. "No more slaves, just people finding their own way forward." Marcia's hand found his, her fingers intertwining with his own. Anita stood on his other side, her initial shock giving way to something like wonder. "What now?" Anita asked. "Without the lords, without the old structures." "Now," Stephen replied, watching as members of different species throughout the chamber looked at each other with new understanding. "We build something better. Together." The three of them stood united as the old empire crumbled around them, and the foundation of something new began to take shape. Not an empire of fear and subjugation, but a federation of equals. Stephen squeezed Marcia's hand, feeling fully human for the first time. "I think I'm going to like mortality," he said with a grin. Her emerald eyes sparkled. "It has its advantages." "Such as?" Her violet lips curved in a mischievous smile. "You'll have to live to find out." And for the first time since awakening to his supposed godhood, Stephen Reiner felt truly alive. The twin suns of New Trinity cast golden rays across crystalline waters, painting the pristine beach in shades of amber and rose. 3 sets of footprints traced a meandering path along the shoreline, one human, one with the slight crystalline shimmer of Argont steps, and one with the deeper impressions of a Calexian. Stephen Reiner leaned back in his handcrafted wooden chair, watching the gentle waves with contentment that still surprised him 5 years after their arrival. The scars on his chest where the cube had once resided had faded to silvery lines that caught the sunlight. "You're burning," Marcia observed, her violet skin glistening with seawater as she emerged from the ocean. Her emerald eyes surveyed him critically, though her lips curved in the smile that still made his heart race. "Humans are so fragile." "I prefer delightfully temporary," Stephen countered, accepting the protective lotion she tossed to him. "Temporary?" Anita's voice carried from her position beneath a nearby shade canopy, where she was reviewing updates on her datapad. "It's been 5 years of temporary on this rock." "The former admiral misses her fleet," Marcia teased, dropping onto the sand beside Stephen's chair. Anita's blue skin darkened slightly, her species equivalent of a blush. "I miss efficiency. The Federation Council sent 16 requests for consultation this morning alone. And yet you're here with us instead," Stephen noted with a grin. "Someone has to keep you two from destroying civilization again." Despite her words, Anita's expression softened as she abandoned her work and approached them. Stephen watched his 2 partners with quiet amazement. Their relationship had surprised everyone, most of all themselves. The former lord, the resistance leader, and the imperial admiral, enemies turned allies turned something far more complex and beautiful. "Any word from Commander Kane?" Marcia asked, accepting a glass of chilled fruit juice from Anita with a nod of thanks. "The unification of the outer rim is proceeding ahead of schedule," Anita replied. "The argon crystalline technology integration was the breakthrough they needed." In the 5 years since the awakening wave, as historians now called Stephen's destruction of the cube, the galaxy had transformed. The energy released had awakened dormant genetic potential in all the created races, freeing them from ancient limitations while granting each species unique abilities once reserved for the lords alone. The transition hadn't been seamless. Old hatreds died hard. But under the guidance of the Trinity Council, with representatives from former imperial worlds, rebel territories, and neutral systems, a new order had emerged. Not an empire ruled by gods, but a federation of equals. "Private shuttle incoming," announced the modest home's AI system. "Federation Diplomatic Registry." Stephen groaned. "Tell me that's not—" "President Harper sends his apologies for the interruption," the AI continued, confirming his fears. "So much for our vacation," Marcia sighed, standing and brushing sand from her sleek swimsuit. "We knew it wouldn't last," Anita said, already shifting into her professional demeanor. "The progenitor artifacts discovered in the Vega system won't interpret themselves." Stephen remained seated, savoring the last moments of peace. "They can wait 5 more minutes," he insisted, reaching out to catch both women by the hand before they could retreat to their duties. Surprised, they allowed him to pull them back into the sunlight. "Look," he said simply, gesturing at the paradise around them, the first world they had discovered together after leaving the Empire behind, the planet they had named for themselves. "Remember why we do this." The three of them stood together, watching the perfect blue waters lapping at the shore of their private sanctuary. Behind them lay responsibility, diplomatic challenges, and the complex work of rebuilding a galaxy. But here, now, existed something none of them had dared imagine in their former lives: freedom, purpose, and love that transcended biology and history. "For Trinity," Marcia murmured, her free hand brushing Stephen's faded scars. "For a future without masters," added Anita, her posture relaxing once more. "For us," Stephen finished, squeezing their hands. "All of us." The diplomatic shuttle appeared as a silver speck on the horizon, reality intruding as it always must. But as they turned together to meet it, Stephen knew the truth that had eluded him as both God and man until now. True power wasn't in controlling the universe. It was in helping it grow, alongside those you loved. Some infinities, he had discovered, were better when shared. Dear traveler of stars, you've just witnessed the chronicle of Trinity, a tale of power found, questioned, and ultimately transformed. Like Stephen, Marcia, and Anita, we all face choices between dominion and connection, between wielding power over others or sharing it among equals. As the cube symbols fade from these pages, I wonder, what fragments of divinity do you carry within? What ancient hierarchies might you challenge? What personal galaxies might you liberate? The coordinates to New Trinity remain encrypted in these words, awaiting those who understand that true sovereignty begins with recognizing it in others. Until our paths cross among distant stars, Chronicle Keeper of the Federation Archives, 5th year of liberation, I'd love to know your thoughts on the story. Did Stephen's journey from reluctant God to liberated human resonate with you? Which character spoke to you most deeply? The archives await your response.